Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ed Cornfield. On behalf of the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation and Alaska Public Media, welcome to another edition of Hangar Flying. We're talking again with Wally Hansen, Chief Instructor at Elmendorf Flying Club. Last time we discussed the pre-takeoff decision-making for what if the engine quits. Welcome back to Hangar Flying, Wally.
Thank you very much. Good to be back.
So let's talk a little bit about, as a flight instructor, what's one of the toughest things to teach a student?
Well, one of the things I've found over the years is properly teaching how to slip the airplane. It's one of the requirements in the PTS, and generally it's given on turn to final. And a lot of folks, that's what they teach and that's where they slip. But if you back that up out into the area to let the student practice slipping, I found that it works much better and they understand the control inputs much better. We generally will find a straight line and have the student slow down to VX or VY, power to idle, and then slip the airplane to fly down that straight line, power lines or a road or whatever. Once they're established, then you have them do turns both to the left and to the right. That would be into and away from the slip. And then transition over, if they're doing a left slip, they transition over to a right slip, and they do S turns back and forth in the slip. And we find they just have better control over it, and they have less tendency, if they're drifting, to take the slip out instead of using the ailerons.
Mm-hmm. It's good practice on what to do with your feet. Now, there's some airplanes that you probably wouldn't want to slip with full flaps. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Most of the POHs I've seen say full flaps and a full slip are not recommended. That's generally because a full flip or full slip with full flaps could blank out the tail. It also could cause aileron flutter. I have slipped airplanes, all the Cessna 152s, 172s, 206s, 182s, full flaps, full slip, and I have never seen any adverse effects to doing that. So it says it's not recommended, but it does not say it's prohibited.
If you could pick one thing that you could tell the folks out there that would make aviation safer in Alaska, what would that be?
I think the whole weather decision-making process is generally maybe a little overlooked or not gone into in quite as much detail. Weather up here changes, and that's why so many folks down in the lesser 48 put a premium on Alaska flying, because it changes quite often. Mm-hmm. But when you're making a decision, I use the three nobodies rule. And the three nobodies rule says that if nobody's dying, nobody's getting shot at, and nobody's paying you the big bucks, you may be better off staying on the ground than attempting to make a flight in bad weather.
It's good advice, and I think also to point out that, especially this time of year, we're getting into the winter months, weather changes quite quickly, sometimes unpredictable. Mm-hmm. Have lots of extra fuel on board. You know, the 30-minute rule for the FARs may not be as applicable in Alaska as, I mean, an hour and a half might be more, depending on the conditions. You might want to add an hour to that.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
If you had to put three things in your survival kit for, in case you needed them, what would they be? What would they be?
I normally carry some really heavy boots that I obviously can't fly in, but they're good for after we get on the ground. Some good heavy mittens and extra thermal and socks, thermal underwear and socks, And I have those all in plastic bags because once you get everything wet, you can't stay warm and you've got to be dry. So, and that defeats or at least delays hypothermia.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you a question. If you, what are some of the common mistakes that you see pilots that come in that that they make? Maybe bad bad habits that they've had. Maybe just one or two of those things.
One of the prime bad habits I've seen is leaning the aircraft or not leaning the aircraft. There's several different things that I've seen. One includes leaning the airplane out until the engine starts running rough and then give 2 full turns back in. And again, I haven't seen that in any POH. Today's airplanes, they normally tell you to lean 50 degrees rich of peak. And the other big common misconception is you don't have to lean below 3,000 feet. That generally comes from pilots looking at the climb chart where it says you must lean above 3,000, which means that maybe you don't have to below 3,000, but that's on a climb chart. If you look at the cruise chart, it says the numbers are all based on proper leaning techniques.
Mm-hmm. And fuel is sometimes is cheaper than the alternative, having to replace
Exactly.
cylinders in an engine.
Yep.
Well, folks, I'm sorry, that's all the time we have. And be safe out there when you're flying. Have a good night.
Hello everyone, and thanks once again for joining us for this Friday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy. On the advisory chart here, there's a winter weather advisory up for the eastern Arctic coast. This is out until 9 p.m. this evening. Due to the gusty winds, which this morning were gusting up around 50 miles per hour there, coming down a little bit this evening, but still snow and blowing snow occurring over in that area. Should be down enough by 9 p.m. again for the advisory to drop. High wind warnings here for northeast Prince William Sound. Look for those winds to continue to increase and gust up over 70 miles an hour beginning as early as late tonight or at the latest by tomorrow afternoon, but that'll continue probably through much of the weekend. And then wind advisories over here for the northern areas. Actually, pretty good significant increase in the winds here over the next couple of days. Actually, over the next 12 to 24 hours, working eastward as those north winds pick up. Storm warnings out for Lynn Canal, for example. So that usually suggests winds gusting over 65 miles an hour all along the North Gulf Coast there, and again over Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, even down into Stevens Passage. On the satellite imagery, way out to the west, big low pressure center here over the northeast Sea of Okhotsk, and the frontal system stands out quite vividly here across the western Aleutians. Winds 40 to 60 miles an hour from the south there with rain into Shemya. But all of this mostly moving off to the northeast here. A little bit of a eastward drift down underneath, but big area of high pressure over the central Bering Sea in advance of that storm system right in through here. Some of this moisture slipping over the top in the form of batches of low clouds. Maybe some flurries here you can see in over Norton Sound. Pieces of that dropping southeast across the southwest interior. And also an upper level low, still have a cyclonic circulation here over the interior with the low center almost right over the Nenana area, for example. So bands of clouds and flurries or light snow with that. And then the areas that clear out, temperatures will drop to about 35 below like they did around Bettles, for example. Pretty clear here along the North Gulf Coast, south central Alaska areas, and kind of a cold day in the Susitna Valley with most temperatures staying below zero the entire day and into the afternoon. Front pushing through the southeast coast. Those south winds this morning were still as high as 40 miles an hour at Lynn Canal. Then the front just slipping southward there, and they swinged around to the north, now gusting up to about 30 miles an hour at Skagway. Temperatures fallen into the mid-20s. Rain ended at Juneau, temperature down near freezing now, but still to the south in the 40s with rain on the south side of that low center. Otherwise, back to the north here, this surface high sitting almost right underneath the upper level low. So that's why areas that clear out are so cold. But bands of Again, flurries and fog, low clouds, they're rotating around that center. Clearest areas out here in the west, but then there's that northwest drift of the moisture here coming across the southwest part of the state. But generally a pretty nice day here over Bristol Bay. Temperatures well below freezing. A little bit of snow still reported, very light snow, showery, not much accumulation at all here over the Alaska Peninsula. High pressure over the Pribilofs, light winds there, and then you can see the tighter pressure gradient here in advance of that front. But again, all that is taking off to the north and northeast. You can see tonight high pressure holds. There's a hint that it's drifting to the east here over the southeast Bering Sea. Strong high pressure in over the interior. Lower stuff up along the Alaska Range, north or the western and northern side of the mountains there, but clear and cold. Gusty north winds in areas. Again, the high wind warning there for areas of Prince William Sound, and a few flurries over the eastern interior. And again, that winter weather advisory ends for the eastern Arctic coast at 9 p.m. But already seen some southerly winds, just a breeze right now, 10 to 15 miles an hour here from St. Lawrence Island up to the Bering Strait. That's going to gradually increase there and begin to affect the western areas with increasing winds later tonight and into tomorrow, while again the winds lighten up here on the east side. Another low center way out here over the Aleutians. They'll be heading up to the north with more gale force winds out over that area. Otherwise, cold air continues to push southward here, this high Arctic high nosing in and shoving that Arctic front right down into the central areas tonight. So snow on the north side, rain or rain and snow mixed down on the south side. Another center down in this location. The whole upper level low over the southeast interior will be gradually pushing off to the southeast. So this next center will probably just link up here, and rain or snow over the southern areas here south of the front. North, much colder, big increase in the winds. Of course, downslope winds that'll tend to clear it out. Hold any light snow. We'll be back over in Canada there, either north or east of the border. Fair weather, pretty gusty north winds here as northerly flow aloft develops as the big upper ridge aloft begins to push eastward here. So again, the high wind warnings all along the North Gulf Coast here, working into the northern panhandle. Storm warnings for the marine areas there for the northern panhandle. All these snow showers should remain off the coast, either to the east of Kodiak Island or south off the coast there. And big increase in the winds. Look for gales here over the Chukchi Sea. Increasing winds over the western Arctic coast, but staying light in the east side there. Should be pretty dry with that southwest flow across the north slope, but look for some clouds, maybe some flurries showing up here, Cape Lisburne, Point Hope, and then down into the Bering Strait. Now the high is beginning to edge its way eastward right up to the coastline, but this low center heading almost due north. Some of this beginning to slide eastward as it goes over the top of the ridge there. Actually will flatten it out, and it looks like on Sunday or late Saturday that front will be draped right across the north slope and the Arctic coast with some light snow there. Southwest winds 15 to 30, could see some gusts of 35 miles an hour again here on the east side, but becoming lighter down across the Chukchi Sea. And this front really weakening now as it heads eastward, with a low center tracking northward to the west of it. Just a narrow band of rain possibly dragging across the Adak and then into the Atka areas, but not much in the way of winds there. Southeast winds mild, so a lot of low clouds, areas of fog. In fact, with the warmer air aloft moving in from west to east here with the upper level high, look for the inversions to begin to increase, so the winds lighten up. See a definite increase in the low clouds and fog over the interior valley areas. But the northerly winds will probably keep it out of like the Susitna Valley, possibly the Matanuska Valley, and especially where it's very windy here. Very cold temperatures into the northern panhandle. Now the Arctic boundary all the way down almost to the Queen Charlotte. So the whole area here now well below freezing. Coldest in the north, windiest in the north, but northeast winds and snow spreading into Metlakatla over to Heidelberg and Klawock late Saturday night or Saturday night, and continuing through Sunday, but drying out to the north there. And temperatures this afternoon, the warm spot, 47, that was at Ketchikan. These are all 4 p.m. temperatures, 43 at Wrangell, but 10 degrees colder. Juneau, 33 degrees, 37 here at Elfin Cove, but 40 at Sitka. 28, some pretty good snow showers. Picked up a couple of inches of snow there at Yakutat today. 17 at Cordova, 18 Valdez, just 12 degrees in Whittier. Gusty north winds at Seward, 17 degrees there. and also 17 at Homer, -9 at Wasilla and Palmer, 3 degrees Kenai, and a 13 up at Talkeetna, -18 at Gulkana. Snow, about 2 to 4 miles in snow at the Denali Park entrance, -25 over at Northway, same thing at Eagle. Fairbanks, -11. Cold spot, 27 below at Fort Yukon, and a -8 at Anatuvik. Tanana, 22 below, and some light snow, about a mile and a half in light snow at Bettles with 14 below, -6 at Umiat. And temperatures in the Arctic coast ranging from 1 over at Kaktovik to 3 below at Barrow, and then back up to 7 at Wainwright. -15 at Kivalina, and Noatak at 20 below, but a little bit of a south breeze now, bringing it up to 10 at Point Hope. 21 at Tin City, but below 0 along the north side of the coast, both at Shishmaref and Deering. 3 degrees at Nome, 0 at Golovin, and 10 at Holy Cross. McGrath came in with 7 below. Out over the northern Bering, St. Lawrence Island, 30 degrees, 21 at Amonic, and 28 at Macoriac. Bethel, 13, 14 Togiak, 8 degrees at King Salmon. Mid to upper 30s here over the Alaska Peninsula, but notably colder over toward Port Heiden with 18. Upper 30s to near 40s out over the Aleutians. Mid 30s now above freezing here in the Pribilofs. For lows tonight, 20 to 40 below here over the eastern interior. Coldest from, well, the Copper River Basin right up to the eastern Brooks Range areas, but milder out to the west and southwest. We get back into the 20s here along the southwest coast up to St. Lawrence Island. Right near freezing for the Pribilofs, teens for Kodiak Island, again south central Alaska. Susitna Valley dropping down toward 30 below 0, well below 0 in the wind-free areas of the Kenai Peninsula. Quite a variation though along the North Gulf Coast depending on who has the wind and who doesn't, but down to around 30 below over the Copper River Basin. Panhandle really getting cool here over the northern areas, but holding on above freezing in the mid-30s to the south. For the highs tomorrow, lower 40s in the Aleutians, mid-30s here over the Bering Sea. Near freezing up towards St. Lawrence Island, and then 30-degree isotherm right along the coast there, cutting southward across the Alaska Peninsula. Another pretty cold day here over south central Alaska, staying well below 0 over the eastern interior, with some areas not even rising above -30. But that milder air coming in on the southwest winds, keeping the western Arctic coast, even to the central areas, above 0, and look for mid-20s to show up here over the northwest coast. And for flying weather, it looks like pretty good VFR forecast tomorrow and tomorrow afternoon from the Arctic coast all the way down Bristol Bay eastward along the North Gulf Coast, but there'll be quite a bit of turbulence there with that tightening pressure gradient and the increasing upper level support. So turbulence will be the big issue here for the coastal areas. Could be some lingering marginal VFR far eastern, but the heavier stuff will be down here over the central and southern southeast coast. The Bering Sea not looking too bad. Some marginal VFR slipping in from the northwest. Could be some isolated IFR showing up out here actually, and they'll be slipping on up to the north across the Chukchi Sea. And then the band of IFR associated with the main frontal system. Anatuvik, good conditions tomorrow. Starting out marginal maybe, becoming VFR probably by noon. Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR, either approach and rainy, wide open. Windy, ceilings, visibility is unlimited for that pass. Isabel looks VFR. Mentasta, optimistically VFR there. Tanita looking really good. And for Portage, another VFR day. Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR, possibly on those northern entrances, otherwise VFR, and becoming quite turbulent. For the freezing levels here, coming back up towards St. Lawrence Island late tonight, early tomorrow morning, then back down across the Alaska Peninsula, south of Kodiak Island. And again, this whole pattern will be slipping southward throughout the day tomorrow, and then kind of a recovery coming back into the Aleutians a little bit. Icing threats way out here to the west, but again, all this taking off to the northeast there, so really not making much eastward progress at all. Icing free everywhere else. Could be a chance here, some leftover stuff along the panhandle, but increase in the winds, that's going to be the big issue there. Upper level wind flow, high pressure here, pushing into the western interior, so still some northerly jets, which is going to help maintain or even increase those northerly winds down here at the surface from the Alaska Range southward into the North Gulf Coast. And then this whole pattern is going to be gradually shifting eastward, so that's supporting those wind warnings for northeast Bristol Bay, and that'll eventually just translate eastward right into the northern panhandle. And for the 9,000-foot winds, northerlies up to 25 knots across south central Alaska, and you can see the low dropping southeastward along the panhandle. High pressure, light variable winds right along the west coast here, and southerlies increasing to 40 knots, quite a push of milder air coming up into the central Bering Sea, and even as high as 55 knots here as that next low center pulls northward. And at 3,000 feet, much the same pattern, 40 to 45 knot winds here into the central Bering Sea, becoming light and variable, high pressure controlling the west side right up into the interior, north to south flow on the east side of that up to 20 to 25 knots generally, and lighter winds now on the eastern Arctic coast, but on the increase there, 50 knot southwesterlies on the west side. Low pressure over the panhandle, so southwest winds on the south side of the center as it comes down. Then the big increase in the winds that's going to occur along the eastern Gulf Coast in across the northern panhandle. Turbulence, look for severe to develop here over Prince William Sound, especially for small aircraft along and just south of the coastline, eventually sliding into the northern panhandle throughout the day and into tomorrow night. Lighter, less turbulent conditions due to the lighter winds under the main low center over the southern panhandle, but moderate chop all along Kodiak Island, right down to the Alaska Peninsula, up to the Alaska Range, smooth in through this area, and then with those change in wind direction here, moderate chop right up into the Chukchi Sea, through the central Bering, on down into the central Aleutians. And moving on to marine forecasts at low center right in this area, so variable winds here, south 30 knots early on for the southern areas, southeast over the inside waters, increasing to northeast 30 knots. Storm warnings, freezing spray becoming heavy by tomorrow night here over the Lynn Canal Glacier Bay areas, gale warnings along the coast, small crafts to the south. And then for Sunday, holding about the same, bring some gales into the central areas here. And again, storm warnings, sustained winds at 50 knots, much higher gusts out of the channeled areas. Now you have northeast winds all the way down to Dixon Entrance, more of a northerly wind there just west of Prince of Wales Island. And then northeast kind of increasing as you go up the coastline there, just put gales up here and storm force gusts coming out of the bays and passes. For Kodiak Island, gale warnings, northwest 25 to 35 knots, coming down to small craft for Shelikof Strait, but northwesterlies, northwest gales here with heavy freezing spray. Barren Islands back into Kamishak Bay, heavy freezing spray for Cook Inlet with small craft advisories for those north winds. Gale warnings along all of the coast here. Northeast, 30 knots sustained, Prince William Sound, much higher gusts out of the northern bays here, and that looks to be extending into the Copper River Delta with freezing spray everywhere here in all these marine areas with the heavy stuff back across the Barrens, Shelikof Strait, even Kodiak Island, on up into Cook Inlet, Resurrection Bay, and Prince William Sound. Then for Sunday, drop the winds off a little bit. It'll be kind of a slow going though, but by afternoon, down to 15 knots for much of Cook Inlet. Lose the gales though for Kamishak Bay and the Barrens. Coming down in the afternoon, getting kind of light here for Kodiak. Northwest 10 to 15 knots. Still some small craft advisories here along the North Gulf Coast, but more of a northwest direction, holding northeast, but down there for Prince William Sound. Still looking at the higher gusts though, all of these areas along the coast. And Bristol Bay north at about 10, northeast, pretty light winds coming up for Saturday here, but starting out with small craft advisories, gradually coming down by this time tomorrow from Sitkinak over to Sand Point or so. And then for Sunday, east at about 10 for Bristol Bay, and now southeast, milder winds coming up to 20, maybe some higher gusts here, particularly near Cold Bay, but light variable winds southwest of Kodiak Island. Out in the Aleutians, southeasterlies 15 to 30 knots here, strongest across Adak and Atka, with the gale force winds just west of the area right through here, but those will probably die off as that front weakens tomorrow night. And on Sunday, barely holding on to small craft advisories, lighter east winds there off to the west. And then could see some 20 to 25 knot winds here ahead of that front, which will lie right in about this position midday or into the afternoon on Sunday. But small craft advisory westerlies there, really due to the low lifting northward into the southwest bearing and then the flow coming around that center. Otherwise, southeast to south winds here on over toward the Fox Islands. For the southwest coast, variable conditions around Nunivak Island could increase to 30 knots, just call it small craft advisories developing here, southerly St. Lawrence Island into the northern Bering Sea. Pribilof, southeast 20, pretty light variable winds at about 10 there for the Kuskokwim Bay area, but mostly from the northeast. And then all southeast on Sunday, 15 to 25 knots, particularly the strongest winds for the Pribilofs up into the northern Bering Sea. And up along the Arctic coast, lightest winds tomorrow will be on the east side here. Gales coming into the Chukchi Sea as well as the western Arctic coast, mostly from about Point Lay onto the southwest, coming down to 20 knots for the central coast. And then for Sunday, becoming southwesterly. Again, that front is going to drape across the north slope. So the main low center off to the northeast, back to the gales for the east side, and about 20 knots for the central coast. And for tonight, again, Arctic front pushing southward across the Panhandle, much colder temperatures, winds swinging around to the north. Already have done that over the northern areas, but kind of holding in the mild air at least through tomorrow over the southern coast. Another low center developing and riding up along the Arctic boundary there, so a lot of moisture coming into the southern areas of rain, snow, or rain and snow mix, but big increase in the winds over the northern areas. High wind warnings back across Prince William Sound. High pressure holds through Sunday. Have a great evening and weekend.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.